All right, welcome to Dose Department of Solar Efficiency Podcast. I got my guest Kenneth here. He's going to talk about himself a little bit, and then we're going to go over some of the topics. Kenneth, take it away.
Hey, how are you doing today? My name is Kenny Cottrell. I'm a second year doctoral candidate at UNLV for public policy, where my thesis focused on the implementation of an automated demand response program for indoor agriculture in Nevada, meaning that a lot of indoor agriculture facilities during these peak times where we have like where the county's running 120 degrees, air conditioners working powerfully. Next thing you know, we have a blackout. The thing about blackouts, they're terrible bad and also bad for the utility companies. They spend at least $1 million a day during that shutdown period. So a demand response programs means like the utility company literally gives you money, like big, large commercial farms, data centers, to reduce your electrical consumption during a time of a peak emergency. And that's a good program. I think it'll get bipartisan support, especially in the area we're in. But at the end of the day, blackouts are bad, and we need to mitigate this. We're a first world country. We're not like other second, and to me, that's what differentiates the two between like a first world and a second world country is like, do you have blackouts or not? And that's one of the things that we should be strive to prevent.
Wow. So before this is you're bringing an awesome topic before I even start with what I wanted to bring forward that the main focus is that these blackouts cost you $1 million each time.
Oh, yeah, minimum. Think if someone dies and if someone dies and the utility company is found liable for the issue, you open yourself up to litigation.
Right.
Each time, like you have like if it goes off in the hospital, now the hospital's running off the backup generators, and then they're working with the backup generators. That costs more money.
Got it.
Each
Got it. I
time,
was
each time,
thinking, I was
yeah.
thinking specifically to the agriculture that there was,
Oh,
connecting it to the indoor.
So the indoors they're not the one really getting the blackouts. So like the thing about it, these blackouts only are hitting like areas like Boulder Highway, like the low income neighborhoods. They're the ones getting the blackouts. But
Okay.
it's them coming back online. But it's the additional strain that since they're on a black, everything else is running at full capacity. It'll be way easier just for us to just reduce demand by 1 to 3% to prevent a blackout. And that's just me going to the big energy consumers like, hey, I'll give you some money to turn it down like 5 or 10% so we don't have a blackout.
All right. Well, that actually sounds like it makes a lot of sense. So you're basically saying that storage, like maybe solar storage, any kind of storage at home, at residential in the inner city, is really where this could make a big difference. Is
Oh,
that
definitely. If you're doing with storage, yeah, and then we'll go more than that with the solar. I think any facility that you're spending any decent significant amount of money, if you don't have a solar panel system and battery storage in Nevada, you're not thinking. It's free
right?
money. We have the highest concentration of energy in the world from solar in the Mojave Desert. And like the next thing is the backup battery storage systems, and that's what can like be. You talk about almost paying no money for like at least a significant chunk of your money being storage because like you're storing it at night. You're storing it at night or like during these high periods of energy costs, you can afford to like, oh yeah, I'll take that extra money and I'll save some.
Well, the whole thing about the cost, right? So if you're specifically talking about inner cities, they may not have the ability to actually invest in solar. Maybe they're renting, maybe whatever the situation is. Are you seeing that, some of the products that you're kind of talking about can
Yeah.
address
We've
that
done
or
we've done because there's a lot of there were like a community solar grants, so that they'll work with the communities where they'll put big community solar farm in an inner city neighborhood, and then off that energy, the whole neighborhood or apartment buildings are drawing down from that reduction of energy costs. So like I've
right?
always been a big fan of community solar grounds. There's one over in by Nevada Partners. They're permitting for them right now. There's another one off Decatur that I've looked at through the Envy Energy has gotten, but like that's one of the best projects. I worked on one when was working for Energy Solutions, worked for Illinois Science Program, and we worked with a number of different municipalities and government nonprofit organizations that provided community solar, which is what
Nice.
you're talking about, and it's like it's needed, and it does help the low income resident or tenant who's just trying to make to pay their phone bill. I mean, buy the electrical bill.
Right, right. Well, what at that point, let's add the main topic, right? So let
Yeah.
me throw out the question to you. Here's the main one. So when you integrate this, let's see how we can make it work. So in a world of global wireless power transmission, how do we design residential solar systems to arbitrage for time of use credits?
Oh, I can hit this one out the park. Number
All
one, we're
right.
putting solar on the top of the building. Number two, we're going to put a storage facility, a biggest storage facility I could afford on the back of the property. We're then going to talk to my electrical contractor and say like, what's the primary like time of use? At night, I do not need to be running my HVAC on full blast unless I'm pre-cooling the building. If I have, I'll put arc fault switches or like when people walk by the sensors, like the power cuts on. I will only leave on like the lights on in front of that are like mandatory by my building codes and stuff, or my building permit for operation to keep the lights on. I would be very,
Right.
really smart about that. I rather spend more money up front to build this kind of smart design building than come back and put some cheap in where the cost is going to keep going up, 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 and up. I've never heard of a rate decrease in from a power company, but they're just in Nevada, we're asking for a 9% increase this month. So like that would be the first one. The second part is like with the solar one is like who's regulating? We're talking about on the global scale, who's the regulator? Like, and that's what they're always going to be. Is it the United States or is it the UN? Who's going to like regulate these kind of things? Because like it comes about like maritime law to a sense. Like we're building our satellites, they're bringing directly to us. Who's going to manufacture it?
So
Uh,
you that's a great point. I mean, you're bringing up maritime law. Basically, it's lawless, and everyone now there is maritime law, but it's not relating to
yeah,
things like
you gotta
this.
call it. That's why you can go. That's what the UN is normally. That's what the courts are actually good for is like the maritime law, not like our international law. Like who's gonna like be in charge of it, and then
Right.
like yeah, that'll be that'll be my other thing. And then the other thing is like grid connectedness. Are we going to deal with the manufacturers that are putting in like heat pump water heaters or the heat pump HVAC systems or the smart thermostat systems that can all talk to each other? So they're like, oh, I'm gonna cut on at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, which is the hottest time of the year. I'm going to cut everything off and then I'm going to come back online at 9 p.m. That's what these new heat pump water heaters are doing.
Right.
They go off on like at 10 o'clock at night when power is super cheap. They can fluctuate. And with the AI or like,
Right.
or the signals that it sends out, that would be like on a smart, super industrial commercial one. That's would be like, that's the game changer. If you can follow your time, if you can find like the time you use on like
Right.
when the energy is cost because like energy costs are actually are like sold the day before, so we know when we're going to have a blackout. We know when we've got enough energy on the grid. It's not like we have a finite amount of energy. We only have a finite amount of energy. It's not like it's infinite.
Well, let's say, I mean, there's a way that we can maybe make it appear infinite if we can transmit it easily, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind
Mhm.
of the whole idea of the global transmission here. If we do global wireless transmission, is that we actually do pretty much produce enough power. We just got to move it around, right? So
Correct.
if we could do that, not just with AI, with an intelligent kind of way to to manage the use, but actually transmit it wirelessly. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much the whole point of where I'm coming from. I did want to make one distinction is that the thing I'm talking about is not 0 point energy.
Okay.
Okay. 0 point energy is its own kind of thing, right? Where you pull
Yeah.
energy out of the vacuum of space, right? That is a
No,
so
I'm
far
talking about straight solar. Like
right,
there's enough solar that comes directly into the United States that it can power anything. And you put it just all across the Sahara, the Mojave Desert, like the main big deserts out here, you can collect enough energy. It's like how do you store it? And
right.
that becomes like the big thing. So if I was building a super commercial building, I'll have it all laid out.
Well, the question is how do you transmit it? How do you transport the energy? That's really the key here because there's huge loss in that. So if we can get the efficiency up above what the utilities are doing, which arguably is about with the power lines about 70% efficient, if we can use a system that's even more efficient than that, I don't see why a regulator would have anything else to do but to make sure that this system is more efficient than the local utility, right? To me, that's the answer of the regulator. Now, that means the technology has to be more efficient than the
Right.
current system. And
Right.
that's where I'm basically bringing up this whole idea of this wireless transmission system is that as far as I'm tracking, the technology does exist, but it's being held back because of greed. And so
Oh
we're
yeah,
at the
yeah.
well, the answer is there, right? So all we got to do is just make it happen, and that's pretty much the whole reason why I'm bringing this out to everybody so we can have these kinds of conversations.
I think what you're talking about paired with a smart management system and then like with the ability of the smart system to like know when the peaks are high, peaks are low, where the average person doesn't have to like just look at their app and just say, oh, I made money today, just like a stock.
Right.
and
Oh,
that's how
absolutely.
and that's how or lose some money. But either way, if you could track what your energy use, that's what will make it like a connected. Because like then from there, I know I can expect what the next day is, and I can like we're gonna send this. I've collected this hundred. I've collected this amount of energy that can be transferred or dispersed throughout the grid, and and like I said, I'd love to see if I could sell it back to the grid. That's like at the end of the
So you
day.
said lose money. Are you just, is that an analogy to trading, or do you think there might be in some way you could actually lose money in the system?
Some ways I mean, like with maintenance, I think there's always the maintenance
Okay.
of things.
Right. So
There's maintenance on things. There's always some
going up
type of
against your known costs, but not
yeah,
actually
yeah,
the,
yeah.
like there was a moment when in the oil markets where actually it went negative and you were kind of exposed to, the
No, I don't
triggers.
think, no, no, that was solar. No, if you got enough
Well,
battery storage, if you got enough, like the only thing is it's the maintenance of the equipment, maintenance of the technology, maintenance of the batteries, maintenance of the transmission. That becomes that hard cost. But
right.
no, I think I've always thought solar was the best. Solar coupled with battery storage is the future. If it was up to me, I'll do a code standard change, and just make it mandatory.
So it is in California. It is actually mandatory on new
Of course,
construction.
of course, California, they will be the one to state that does it, but I don't see federally with this administration. Like I worked on the Title 24, which is like the code standards for light and efficiency for like indoor agriculture facilities.
Okay.
So I know about what kilojoules are going to be. Sorry, but like yeah, that's how I would love for that to be a nationwide thing, where it
So
becomes mandatory.
well, I got to say, there's pros and cons. I deal with that, and so there's permitting hell, which most homeowners that come across this deal with is that, they're doing this, they're getting these the solar on their ADUs or accessory dwelling
Yeah,
units, right? Because they're building a new structure in their
yeah.
backyard, and now because it's new, they have to have solar. Now the problem is almost zero contractors design it with this in mind because they know that they're not going to be able to get an occupancy permit until the solar is actually installed on the roof. So there's this vicious cycle that occurs. So this is actually a horrible test scenario, but they don't want to give you this occupancy permit, but you can't get permits to install the solar before you get the occupancy. So there's this like chicken and egg
So you gotta leave the
scenario.
occupancy first, then you have to go back for a second permit and put the solar on there.
Well,
Essentially.
unless you just get it so you can just install it, but who's going to pay for it before you get the occupancy? So you don't know if it's going to pass permits, if it's going to pass
Mm,
inspection, right? So if you have to change the design because it doesn't pass inspection, this is where the problem gets in with liability. So,
okay.
so kind of a permitting hell that we kind of experience over here. You were mentioning regulation in Nevada. Is a utilities are regulated or not?
Yeah, they're regulated super. We got Nevada Public Utility Commission. You have to.
Okay,
It needs an act of legislative to change any of the standards. Like I'm looking
got
at
it.
one for my thesis. We will have to right now. They only offer demand response for residential customers, not commercial. And I would need a legislative bill to pass make this available for commercial demand automated demand response.
So you're referring to virtual power plants when you're
Yeah.
for domestic?
Hmm. And
So
that's good.
so I was going to say we do have those here, but they're basically controlled by the solar company. When it's not, if you have solar, they're using it basically for the
Yeah,
leases,
yeah,
and
yeah. Like they take up all the excess power, then they shift it somewhere else. We have that here, but it's like we can't do it in commercial projects, commercial buildings all the time.
you
No,
can't.
I'm talking about I'm no. So for a commercial demand response program, like that specific kind of program where I'm offering incentives for you to reduce your consumption, it's only available in residential customers.
Is
For
that is that
virtual power plants, we're primarily using residential power, but even
right?
commercial, you can kind of use it, but like it's not clearly stated within the Nevada statute. All right.
Well, is that because demand for commercials during daylight hours mostly, and so that there's a
Just envy energy,
mismatch?
because that's what comes back to these greed and envy energy. We were talking about that when we first opened the show. It's envy energy. Why would I want to give you less money? Why would I want to pay you less money for grid stability? I just want my money.
Right,
Burn more energy. I don't want to give you any solutions.
right,
So
right,
luckily,
right,
progressive states like California, New York, Illinois, they'll enforce these kind of rules and these energy standards to get the building permits.
right, right. So I mean, there's pros and cons with regulation, right?
There
So
are there are there are
like,
there are there are there are different pros and cons of regulation, but like sometimes you gotta like if you really want, you also realize California has 40 almost 40 million people there too. So
Mhm.
like what they're straight on their energy grid is to me relatively amazing compared to you look at the grid in Texas. Texas grid is always failing.
Right.
So you start looking like you talking to a state where one's super regulated versus one's completely deregulated. Which is the better state? Which is the better state? When you talk about a state with like over 30 plus million people, because those you're not going to have a 30 the same problems they have in California. You never have in Nevada just because of the population and demand.
That probably is the main issue, is that there is a huge demand in a short, small area, and that the production is far away, right? And
Hmm.
so you got to move that power to the city, right? And so,
Yeah,
well, why don't we? So we kind of talked about the contracts for energy transmissions, load balancing demand, and then okay, personalized energy contracts. So this is the one I think you're alluding to. So the idea that you can trade, right? So
hmm,
if we could if we can trade locally, right, not just far away because maybe the sun's going down and you don't need as much power, but locally, depending on if people are home, right? If you're not home, you don't need the power that you're producing or storing, and that's the idea of the virtual power plant. But
yep.
if basically we use software, we can transmit that power. Right now, you're not allowed to. Basically, it's a virtual power plant, but it's not. It looks like it's really not happening, as far as I can tell. And the only ones that are going to benefit are those the utility company, and then if a solar company does have a virtual power plant system, ones that they can communicate with each other. So that's the whole idea. I'm trying to bring something that's another product, another item that you install, and it does have wireless transmission. So,
I
that's
think this will be and I'm not always big on what's just do in the United States. So I travel a lot. Like I was in South Africa, I was in Cape Town, and beautiful neighborhood. I've never been to Cape Town. I was in Camps Bay, crazy mansions everywhere. Where I was staying in the harbor, and I was staying in a nice Hilton. Then we had a load shedding every day from 1 to 3, which means no power, no
right,
blackouts. If I go to Camps Bay, my friend had a crazy villa. They didn't have any blackouts because they had backup generators there. They had solar, all of them had solar power. It's like if this is all connected, I guarantee this whole neighborhood is not going to experience thing on there. That's
right,
one thing. I think sometimes not the United States might not be the best place for it. I think new countries like from Guyana, emerging countries, and that'll be one way I think it'll work good. The second thing is I'm a big fan of virtual power plants, mainly because they're cheaper and no less permanent to build a new power plant. A power plant is going to cost you $5 billion. That means you got to pay taxpayer rates. It's going to be overages. No, I've never seen a power plant being built on budget, and we're 3 to 5 years out. Is that
right.
really the best use of our time where I could implement a virtual power plant project for about 400 million, 500 million? It's cheaper and I'll get the same results. At the end of
Well,
the day, we're just trying.
how would you implement that 400?
No, at the end of the day, we're just for like we're trying to create more energy for we're trying to create more put more energy on the grid to prevent blackouts. Like that's like that thing like I focus my research is on. So
Right,
virtual power plants are a great way to taking already existing energy, shifting it back to the grid. And that's whatever the software development that might 4 or 500 million. That's what it costs to develop. Whereas the cost of a half a billion, $5 billion to build any any style power plant. So like
so,
a traditional power plant, and that's where it comes. It's the it's faster to implement this. It's cheaper to implement this than to do a power plant. That's why I think like states like California did that. They move forward to like I want to be interested in this virtual power plant because like they don't want to build any more power plants. They want to actually keep shutting them down.
right. So you think that the cost of the software would be in a $400 million range
I mean, implementing across the country. If we're talking
for
about across the
just the
country, yeah.
software?
Oh, I mean, you gotta go to every state. Yeah, I could easily see over 140 million. Every state that we got to go into, we have to like every utility company we have to talk to.
You're talking about
Every
incorporating regulations, negotiating all that, the
Yeah, we got
software. It's not,
lobbying, we got
but not
lawyers, we
building
got program.
anything new,
No,
right?
program design and getting each utility to be able to capture it. Yeah, but $400 million is not a lot of money when you talk about like the grand scheme of. We talk about like the Department of Energy. We got multiple states. Even if we broke it down to regional blocks,
Right.
it's still cheaper to build a power plant. And we have to go to the same regulation, the Department of Energy, because they don't let you just, oh, I got money, I want to build a power plant. It's such a heavily regulated thing to do.
So basically, you're saying that number is really for consulting fees.
In development and implementation and and program design. Yeah, you got it's program design, implementation, hiring, staffing it out. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So from your perspective, if we can incorporate maybe a product that homeowners buy and almost circumvent all of these costs, right? The homeowner does take on the cost, but really you don't need to negotiate with different entities or different utilities, right? As long as you have the one regulating body for your area agrees that your equipment is more efficient than the utilities equipment, that should be a win. Would you
So
agree?
that'd be that's simply your public utility commission. So
Right,
public utility is going
exactly.
to set it's going to set your rate. So like every state, there's 50 public utility rates around the country. And then
Well,
for the public utility commissions don't collect money. That's what the utilities companies do. So we have to figure out how to get this uh them to like, all right, public utility commission, we got an agreement that we can do this. Go to the utility company and then work out the cost of the utility company, like how to implement this, how to collect this, and that's where it's that like the $400 million. That's where the figure comes on because like who's going to run it, who's going to manage it, who's going to design the program for it.
okay, okay. So my argument is basically the other way around, is that if we can have a system that's more efficient than the power lines themselves, we don't need the power lines. So the utility commission can certify that you can have this system that is above and beyond the current power system.
Correct?
So that's basically my whole argument, and so that's what I'm trying to implement, right? And so that's my intent with this conversation, is to see if there's a way that people like you in this industry can somehow find the parts and pieces that are missing in the direction that I'm kind of pointing at.
We got lobbying from the utility commission, utility, so
That's a
you,
that's a
it's
negative
like yeah,
hedge,
yeah, the
right?
utilities
Yeah,
figure out why am I going to let them cut in my profit? So I got to
because
figure out
we're
how I can
more
work with you.
efficient, because this
Yeah,
system is more efficient.
they
So
don't want more
who
efficient. Yep.
well, guess what? At a certain point, the electorate decides,
And
right?
that's why I said we go to the states. We would go to either do a standard change or go to the legislative allowing this to happen. And by
Right.
allowing this to happen on the legislative side, it will then instruct the Public Utility Commission like this is what the people have voted for. Implement some
Well,
type of
I'm not saying,
program.
yeah, I'm not saying get rid of the utilities. I'm talking
No,
about
no, no. I still like he's the just
competing
that's the
with
thing
the
about and that's the
competition
problem with.
against the utilities.
So I worked in Atlanta before I moved to Vegas. And Vegas is a way more liberal state than Nevada. So I worked in public utility elections for a couple of my friends. And I didn't realize how deep, like the Southern Company and all these other these, they want their fees. They're not added to the change. Come over to the West Coast, they're more open to more different type of utility programs. They're just like, if it can save us more energy, it helps us reduce GHG emissions. If it helps with like water efficiency, it's a different set of guidelines on this side of the country. So I do think state by state utilities, they'll be interested in a great program in a great program because like their public utility commissioners are not beholden to the utility company. And I think like and that's how
They're
I
not
look at it. Some
supposed
of
to
our,
be, right? They're supposed to be independent. That's the whole point. But who's actually in the commission?
yeah. I'm not going to agree to that. But it's like I think this is a great idea, and I think if the United States doesn't adopt this program, I think other countries would be
Right.
very open up, like any of the Emirates or like any of the Latin American countries that are
Oh
going at
yeah.
this. Like I
I'm
think,
100%. I think it's a done deal, as long as the technology can be built, right? So there's
mhm,
that part. If there's no system in place, this is the system, because they're actually surpassing, like kind of like how China went from kind of the dark ages to hyper industrialized. They skipped the industrialization that
yep,
we had to go through for 200 years, and steam engines and all that. They skipped all of that.
yep.
They went straight to the digital economy, well, manufacturing, but in an intelligent way. So absolutely, this would work the same way in that respect. So I think that would work really well. I know of a lot of countries that are using drones already for a lot of uses, and we're not, because of regulation, right? We're
Mhm.
scared that, right? So, but competing against utilities, that's what the only way we're gonna win here, right, in the states. So we got to figure out, how to make this system more efficient than the utility. As
Yep.
far as I'm tracking, there's companies that have it. They get bought out. Basically, their patents get bought out, and they're always quoting in the 90% efficiency, 90% for
Mhm.
transmitting at reasonable distances, which would be in a neighborhood. Basically, we're talking about a mile or so or less. And so, to me, that's a done deal. If we can, 70% versus 90%, I mean, it's easy to regulate. Now, this is a very high level kind of argument that I'm making, right? So we want to try and make it manifest and make it real. So that's why I'm kind of bringing this perspective, because a lot of people aren't. I think there's so much noise that they're like, "What new tech that can do this?" I didn't. It's not even new tech, honestly.
No,
Arguably,
no.
this is what the pyramids did in Egypt and
Yeah.
across the world, right?
I
So
was thinking about Tesla. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the Tesla, like Tesla transmitting energy. Like this is all old stuff. It's been proven for a while.
right,
Um, and like
exactly.
it's just like I just get like there's better technology, there's more efficient, there's more energy efficient ways, and especially with emerging markets now starting to like fight for the same oil, same fossil fuels. We're putting ourselves in a disadvantage of not adopting these kind of measures because what we want to do is like we need to be able to if you want to be truly America wants to be truly energy independent, we need to adopt programs like this.
As I'm tracking Tesla versus Edison, that's basically about generation, not distribution, right? So
Okay.
Edison, right? So Edison was basically, and that's the utility we have here at Southern
Yeah.
California Edison. But Tesla, his next invention was the coil for transmitting wireless power, right? His first, he was working with
Yeah,
generation, right?
I've seen the like the wireless power. That's what I'm familiar with him.
If
But
he
they put
started with
he put
that,
like
he
different
could have
round.
skipped, right? That would, I wish he started with the. I mean, you have to start with generation first, obviously. But if somehow it could have just put out there the transmission before the generation, we wouldn't have had this problem. Of course, that's impossible in history. It ended up this way, right? You start with the generation and then the transmission of the power. But so now here we are.
I
Right?
mean,
So,
in Nevada, they just built a $2 billion transmission line that went from
right.
Reno to
Yeah.
Vegas, and they're trying to cancel the line that goes out to
And do
Eli.
you know the efficiency of it?
No, probably terrible.
Yeah. Right. The best case is 70%,
I
which
believe
is,
that.
yeah.
I believe that. But I'm just like, how did they go this long without them having a transmission line between the two most populous cities in the state?
Right.
I was like, how are we doing? How are y'all able to scale? Like that means that the power should be cheaper now that you got the transmission line. But no, 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 no. We need a 9% increase, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm like, we need stuff like your technology
Right.
to keep it going. Because like, why are we losing money on this?
Well, it's not just money. I mean, it's everyone would benefit, even the utilities, because
Yeah.
they're really, I think they're drowning because they need to maintain these systems. That's all they're doing, as far as I can tell, is they're just trying to maintain a legacy system. They're trying to design a way to jump across with generation with solar and wind, so that way they have some kind of hedge because it is actually more efficient. Some kind of oh, running out of time. Um, oh,
Well, good. I mean, we had a good conversation.
yeah. Well, we can go for a part two, or we can wrap it up right here. It's up to you.
We can wrap it up. Like I said, I think that this is great. I think more people need to promote this. I like the way this comes out. Um, I think that in the future, it might not be an American country that adopts this measure. I'm definitely looking. I've been going like a lot. I've been traveling a lot recently. I'm seeing the same problems over there, and I think some of their ministers of energy, especially the ones that have money, these countries that do have money, they'll be quicker to adopt these kind of measures because they're at the end of the day, they know it's good for the people.
Absolutely.
It's not, and like sometimes capitalism does get in the way, or they just don't want to switch off their old grids. But if it's a new country, they're already building new grids, they're already putting new smart meters in there, they're already moving in the right direction. I would want to see this in an energy code standard change where this might be um, uh mandated at some point to me.
Well, maybe that's the way to go. We start with other countries and then we bring it home to the United States. Well,
I definitely do that.
well, Kenneth, I appreciate it. Thank you for being my guest on Department of Solar Efficiency podcast, DOSE, right?
Yeah.
And if anyone has any questions, leave them in the comments below. And is there any way you want people to
Oh
maybe
yeah,
get
feel free
contact
to
with
look
you?
me up. I'm Kenny Cottrell. You can follow me on social media at Kenny Cottrell. That's KENNYCOTTRELL. Like I said, I'm a second year doctoral candidate at UNLV for public policy. Go Rebels. And yeah, look forward. Just Google me. I'm pretty popular. I've written a couple of articles about energy efficiency within the indoor agriculture space in the Association of Energy Service Professionals. So check up AESP. It'll give you a little bit of background and stuff and some of the research I've been doing.
Awesome. Well, Kenny, I appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again and come up with
Definitely.
some more information.
All right. You have a great day.
All right. Thank you. And
Thanks.
everybody, stay tuned for the next one.